Good morning, Professor. How are you?
Good morning. Pretty good, thank you.
Before I ask you a question, let's remind our viewers about some of the comments that started this controversy in the first place.
The hook-nosed, bagel-eating, locks-eating, imposter perpetrating a fraud, Johnny-come-lately, just crawled out of the caves and hills of Europe, wannabe Jew.
Professor Martin, do you think that Louis Farrakhan did the right thing yesterday by dismissing Mr. Muhammad?
Yes, I believe that Minister Farrakhan exhibited a great deal of courage and moral leadership. And I think that now, Abraham Foxman of the ADL should now follow his lead in also denouncing some of the more unfortunate things that the ADL has done over the years, such as, for example, spying on black people, such as accessing the confidential police records of black people, such as collaborating with the South African Secret Service and the Israeli Secret Service to the detriment of American citizens.
We're going to be speaking to Mr. Foxman in just a second, but let me mention something that Mr. Farrakhan said yesterday. He said, while I stand by the truths that he spoke, referring to Mr. Muhammad, I must condemn in the strongest terms the manner in which those truths were represented. Do you believe then that Mr. Muhammad did speak truths about the Jewish people?
I, of course, did not see his entire speech. I did see the ad in the New York Times, and there were one or two things, at least in there, not necessarily the whole thing, but there were a couple of things that I believe were true. For example, there were a couple allusions to the question of Jewish involvement in the African slave trade, which was true. There were some allusions also to the Israeli role in collaborating with South Africa to the detriment of Africans. So those were at least two things I noticed that had some truth.
Of course, realize that a lot of people disagree that those are truths and certainly say there is another side to that story. Your writings, as I mentioned earlier, do echo some of the beliefs held by members of the Nation of Islam. Sir, what is the benefit in prolonging this debate?
Which debate? Do you mean the debate,
between
slavery?
the blacks and Jews that stands now?
Well, this debate has intensified over the last 20 or 30 years, and I believe that most of the motive force for this debate has come from a certain Jewish aggressiveness in dealing with, the black community. For example, this case, I believe, illustrates the fact that it is organizations like the ADL and others who consistently frame the debate. I believe that the time has come for black leaders to assert their right to, have an independent view of the relationships, between blacks and Jews.
Mr. Martin, Professor Martin, we thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you very much.
Abraham Foxman is the National Director of the Anti-Defamation League, and he joins us now from our affiliate in West Palm Beach, Florida, KPTV. Good morning, sir. How are you?
Good morning. How are you? Okay.
Do you believe, I'll ask you the same question I asked Professor Martin, do you believe that Louis Farrakhan did the right thing yesterday by dismissing Mr. Muhammad?
Well, he really didn't do very much. It was a charade. It was an exercise in double talk. What he did was he said he didn't reject the message nor the messenger. He just didn't like its delivery. He didn't like the way Khallid Muhammad packaged it. He didn't reject the anti-Semitism. He continued to repeat it. He called it the truth. He engaged in verbal terrorism of hate, the same type of hate that we just heard, unfortunately, from a professor that teaches on college campus.
Mr. Farrakhan also called your organization anti-black and anti-American. Do you think... Go ahead.
Well, he also accused us of controlling the Vice President of the United States and the Senate. It's part and parcel of vile, ugly, anti-Semitic rhetoric.
But isn't it true, sir, that you're both a little bit guilty of escalating this war of words?
I don't know when one becomes guilty of escalating words when all we did was call on good people in this country to stand up against bigotry and racism. This wasn't just anti-Semitism, it was anti-white, it was anti-Catholic, it was anti-gay. This is hate speech. This is being taught on campuses. This is being preached. When we stand up and say, good Americans stand up and say no, I don't consider that escalating the confrontation. I see it as a service to the American people to expose the hate in the hope that they will reject it.
In 10 seconds, sir, do you see the division between your groups so deep that it will not be healed?
There is no great division between the American Jewish community and the African-American leadership. There is a division between the African-American leadership and Louis Farrakhan, and certainly between us and him.
Abraham Foxman, thanks for joining us this morning.
Thank
We'll
you.
take a break, but first, this is Today on NBC.